Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Smooth Brain EDH. Today we've got $50 budget decks for you. Cameron will be piloting his Ephara deck. This deck has a lot of enter the battlefield and draw card synergies, and it accrues a whole bunch of value over time. Justin's back with his Kwain deck. His game plan is to control the board until he can sneak out a win. Up next is Logan with Torbran, and with him out, Logan gets a +2 to all red damage, so he's trying to burn his opponents out. And lastly is Chandler. He's borrowing Tyler's mono-green Omnath deck. This deck's trying to win by making the biggest Omnath possible, and there might be an absurd number of forests in this list. Alright, let's go check out their starting hands. Starting off with Cameron, he keeps 2 plains, an island, command tower, Thraben Inspector, Into the Royal, and Cataclysmic Gearhulk. Justin keeps a hand of Labyrinth of Scophos, Plains, Island, Swords to Plowshares, Essence Scatter, Azor's Elecutors, and Baird Steward of Argive. Logan keeps a hand of 2 mountains, Commander Sphere, Lightning Strike, Thrill of Possibility, Biforce, and a Kiln Fiend. And on theme of keeping 7s, Chandler keeps 6 forests and an Into the Wilds. Alright, now that we've seen their hands, let's take a look at the game. Justin wins the die roll, and he just plays a plains and passes. Chandler takes a similar turn and plays a forest and passes to Logan. Would you believe me if I told you Logan did the same thing but with a mountain? And Cameron always has to be different, so he plays a command tower into a Thraben Inspector, making a clue token. On his turn, Justin plays an island and casts Kwain, before passing to Chandler. And Chandler just drops another forest and passes to Logan. Logan just plays a mountain and casts a Firebrand Archer. He then passes to Cameron. Cameron plays a plains for turn and then immediately swings one at Logan, who takes it. After thinking for a bit, Cameron just passes to Justin. Justin plays a plains for turn and then just passes to Chandler. Chandler plays a forest, casts Omnath, and then passes to Logan. And on his turn, Logan plays a tapped Desert of the Fervent and then swings for 2 at Cameron before passing. Cameron sacrifices his clue on the instep, drawing a card. Cameron moves to his turn, plays an island, and then casts Soul Herder. But in response, Justin counters it with Essence Scatter. Cameron passes, and Justin activates Kwain on his end step. Everyone gains a life and draws a card. Justin plays a plains as his land for turn, and then taps for 4, casting Baird Steward of Argive. And tapped out, he passes to Chandler. Chandler plays a forest, and then taps for 4, casting Into the Wilds. He passes, and on his end step, Logan casts Thrill of Possibility, discarding a card and drawing 2. And everybody loses a life to Firebrand Archer. Logan plays a mountain, and then taps for 3, casting Commander Sphere. He then taps his last land and Commander Sphere to cast Krark the Thumbless. And everyone also takes a damage from him casting Commander Sphere. Cameron plays a plains as a land for turn, and then taps for 4, casting Ephara. He then passes to Justin, who activates Kwain on his end step. Everyone draws and gains. Justin plays a Labyrinth of Scophos as land for turn, and then passes to Chandler. And on his upkeep, Into the Wild triggers, and Chandler puts a forest onto the battlefield. Chandler then taps for 1 and casts Helix Pinnacle. But instead,
are you sure about that?
Justin vetoes it, and then Chandler passes. On his turn, Logan plays a mountain, and then taps for 4, casting Torbran. Logan then moves to combat and swings Krark at Cameron, who chumps it with Thraben Inspector. Logan then decides that playing at instant speed is in his best interest, so he passes. On his turn, Cameron taps for 4 and casts Solemn Simulacrum, finding an island to the battlefield tapped. Justin activates Kwain on Cameron's end step, and everyone draws and gains a life. And because of this, Cameron actually has to discard 2 cards on his cleanup now. Ephara triggers on Justin's upkeep, and Cameron draws a card because Solemn entered last turn. Justin doesn't do anything on his turn. Chandler floats 5 mana on his end step, and Justin discards a card. Chandler gets another land to Into the Wilds, then plays a forest, and after a little bit of thinking, Chandler swings 6 at Logan. Logan declares Firebrand Archer as his blocker. Before damage, Logan casts Lightning Bolt, targeting Chandler. Krark triggers, and Logan wins it, getting a copy and aiming the copy at Chandler. Firebrand Archer also triggers, and everyone else takes an additional 3. Firebrand Archer dies to damage. After that, Chandler moves to discard and discards a forest. Logan plays a mountain, and then casts Goblin Slide for 3 mana. Everyone at the table reads the card, and it resolves. Logan then casts Sulfuric Vortex, and makes a 1/1 Goblin off of his enchantment. Justin is not having it today, so he casts Supreme Will, countering it unless Logan pays 3. Logan moves to combat and swings Torbran and Krark at Chandler. Chandler takes 8 more damage, and Logan passes after that. Cameron, digging for lands, evokes a Muldrifter, drawing 2 cards. He finds a plains, plays it, and then casts a Mimic Vat. Justin decides not to activate Kwain on Cameron's end step, and Cameron discards a Cloudblazer. Justin decides to activate Kwain on his upkeep, everyone draws and gains 1, and then Cameron draws another card to Ephara. Justin plays a Plains, and then casts Time Wipe, bouncing Kwain. All creatures are destroyed, and Cameron imprints Solemn Simulacrum to mimic that. After it's resolved, Justin passes to Chandler. Chandler gets another forest from Into the Wilds on his upkeep, then plays a forest as land for turn. He then taps for 5, and casts Nissa, who shakes the world. He then floats 6 mana and recasts Omnath. He then untaps and animates a land, swiftly hitting Logan for 3, and then passes turn. Moving to Logan's turn, he plays a mountain, and then recasts Torbran before passing to Cameron. On his turn, Cameron taps for 2, delves his graveyard, and casts Treasure Cruise, drawing 3. He then plays a land and casts Soul Ring. He then activates Mimic Vat, making a copy of Solemn Simulacrum, finding a basic to the battlefield, and knocks over Logan's deck. Since the Sad Robot has haste, he sends 2 at Justin. Cameron moves to the end of his turn and discards 3 cards. Cameron draws with Ephara on Justin's upkeep, and during his main phase, Justin ECDs Chandler's Nissa. In response, Chandler floats 6 mana. Justin says go after that. Chandler puts another forest to the battlefield off of Into the Wilds. He then plays another forest, then moves to combat, swinging Omnath at Logan and a 3/3 land at Cameron. If it's not clear at this point, Logan and Chandler are having an arms race. Logan chumps with Torbran, but before damage, he casts Chandra's Pyrohelix. He directs 1 damage to the land and 1 damage to Chandler's face. And because of Torbran, both become 3 damage. In response, Chandler floats a mana. Torbran dies, and Chandler passes to Logan. Logan starts his turn off with a mountain, casts a Kiln Fiend, and then passes to Cameron. And on Logan's end step, Cameron disenchants ECD. Cameron plays an island for turn, then taps for 3, casting Nadir Kraken. And if you didn't know, Ephara and Nadir Kraken have a pretty cool combo. Every upkeep, Cameron will draw a card from Ephara, and then pay 1 to make another tentacle. Cameron then passes, and then on Justin's upkeep, Cameron draws a card, and then pays for Nadir Kraken. Also on his upkeep, Justin flashes in Omen of the Sea, scrying 2 and drawing a card. He leaves both on the top. Justin then plays a Plains on his turn, and then passes to Chandler. But before his turn, Chandler floats 11 more mana. On Chandler's upkeep, Cameron draws a card and makes another tentacle. Chandler gets another forest to the battlefield thanks to Into the Wilds. Chandler then taps for 2, shrinks Omnath by 6, and then casts Liege of the Tangle. Chandler then moves to combat, and can you guess who he swings Omnath at? Of course it's Logan. But before blocks, Logan casts Lightning Strike. Can you guess at who? Yep, Chandler. He then pays 1 to make a goblin to chump block Omnath. Chandler then shifts the turn to Logan. On Logan's turn, Cameron makes a Kraken and draws a card. Logan then plays a mountain, and then floats a red with Commander Sphere, and then sacrifices it to draw a card. He then taps for 3 and casts Mana Geode, paying an extra 1 to make a goblin. Bottoms his scry. Logan then passes, and on his end step, Cameron makes a token of Sad Sam. He searches up a basic to the battlefield tapped. Cameron does his Kraken shenanigans on his own turn. He then plays an island. He then moves to combat, swinging the Kraken and the robot at Justin, who takes 8. Cameron then exiles his Solemn Simulacrum on his end step and discards a card. On Justin's upkeep, Cameron does his shenanigans again. Justin plays an Elixir of Immortality on his turn and then passes to Chandler, who floats 10 more mana on Justin's end step. On Chandler's upkeep, Cameron draws another card and makes another Kraken, and Chandler puts another forest into play thanks to Into the Wild. Still on Chandler's upkeep, Justin casts Swords to Plowshares, targeting Liege of the Tangle. Chandler gains 8 life, and it is exiled. And as his land for turn, he plays a whoa, snow-covered forest. Hoping to draw a trample spell in the next couple turns, Chandler holds back and passes to Logan. Cameron does his Kraken stuff on his upkeep, and on his main phase, Logan taps for 4 and casts Chandra, Torch of Defiance. He also pays 1 to make a goblin with Goblin Slide. He then upticks Chandra, revealing Lightning Rig Crew. He casts it. Logan passes, and on his end step, Cameron makes another Solemn Simulacrum token and searches for a basic land. Cameron then does more Nadir Ephara stuff on his upkeep. He then moves to combat and swings the Nadir Kraken at Justin. He then sends a Solemn at Chandra, and also
a 1/1, a 1/1, a 1/1, a 1/1.
Just say how many there are.
A 1/1, a 1/1, and a 1/1.
Logan blocks 2 tentacles with 2 goblins, the Solemn Simulacrum with Lightning Rig Crew, and another tentacle with Kiln Fiend. Justin then activates his Labyrinth on the Kraken. But in response, Cameron flashes in Void Mage Husher, countering the ability. Justin still takes 9 damage. Cameron then moves to his end step. The Solemn token is exiled, and he has to discard 3 cards. Cameron then draws and makes a tentacle on Justin's upkeep. Still on his upkeep, Justin activates the Elixir, gains 5 life, and shuffles his graveyard into his library. Justin then passes to Chandler, and Chandler floats 14 mana on his end step. Chandler gets a forest to the battlefield thanks to Into the Wilds, and Cameron gets a Kraken and draws a card. Chandler then plays another forest and passes to Logan. Cameron forgets to do his Ephara Kraken stuff on Logan's upkeep, and then Logan plays a mountain as land for turn. Logan then starts his turn off by upticking Chandra, revealing a mountain. He leaves it exiled and everyone takes 2 damage. Logan then taps for 8 and recasts Torbran. Logan then passes, and Cameron makes a copy with Mimic Vat, searching a basic land to the battlefield tapped. On Cameron's turn, he does his Nadir Kraken and Ephara combo, because Solemn still entered last turn. He then taps a Soul Ring to cast Azorius Signet. Void Mage triggers, and Cameron bounces it to his hand. Cameron sends Nadir Kraken at Justin, and then Solemn Simulacrum, and 4 more 1/1s at Chandra. Logan blocks the Solemn with Torbran, and then 2 1/1s with Kiln Fiend, and the Lightning Rig Crew. Sad Robot dies, and Cameron draws a card. Justin goes ahead and takes the damage, because he knows his Labyrinth is going to be countered anyway. Chandra dies, but Logan forgets to put it in the graveyard for a little bit. Justin sacrifices Omen on Cameron's end step, scrying 2, and bottoming both of them. Cameron then discards 3 cards. Cameron once again draws and makes a Tentacle on Justin's upkeep. On his turn, Justin taps for 6 and casts Faraz's Ban before passing to Chandler. And Chandler floats 16 more mana before his turn. Cameron misses his Nadir Kraken and Ephara triggers, and for the first time this game, Chandler doesn't get a forest off of Into the Wilds. But he plays one for turn anyway. Chandler casts Haunted Cloak, with the mana Omnath has floating. Cameron lets it resolve as long as it doesn't come at him. He immediately equips it and decides who to swing at. Chandler looks at Logan and says it's been a long time coming, and sends Omnath at Logan. In response, Logan activates Lightning Rig Crew, and everyone takes 3 due to Torbran. After Logan dies, Chandler passes turn, and Cameron reality shifts Omnath on the end of his turn. He also activates Mimic Vat, finding a basic land. On Cameron's upkeep, he does his Nadir Kraken and Ephara triggers. Cameron moves to combat and swings his giant Kraken at Justin, and then swings everything else at Chandler. Chandler blocks the Sad Robot with his manifested card and takes 8, and Cameron draws a card off the die trigger. Cameron then taps for 4 and casts Teferi's Ageless Insight. After that, he bounces Chandler's Haunted Cloak with Into the Royal, kicking it, drawing 2 cards. He then passes to Chandler. Chandler counts all of his lands, and realizing there's nothing he can do from this position, concedes. Cameron is today's winner.
Alright.
Welcome to the end of the video. It was a pretty crazy game, huh? We had a feud on one side of the table, and Cameron got some crazy value in this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe. Don't forget to leave a like and a comment down below. We love hearing from all of our viewers. Anyways, have a great day.